Welcome back to Kari's Confessions, a nonprofit exec tells all. I'm Kari, principal with Incite Consulting Group. I've spent 25 years in the nonprofit sector in leadership roles with 7 organizations. I now provide coaching and consulting services to ensure that nonprofits like yours have the structure, systems, and practices to do your best work. It seems wherever I go, I continue to hear that nonprofit execs need a space to gather, to receive tools, feedback, and advice. Hopefully, that advice encourages you to stay the course in your particular organization or in the sector as a whole. It doesn't seem to matter if you're in a village of 182 or a metropolis of millions anywhere in the United States. Nonprofit work is both gratifying and lonely, sometimes in the same day. I'm here to make sure that you breathe, laugh, smirk, and get excited again about the important work that you do. Today's topic is how to identify future leaders within your organization, which we all need more of. Organizational leadership is so important. Today, I want to dig into why leadership matters within your nonprofit and how to build a bench of future leaders. We've all heard and know that retaining employees is much more cost effective than hiring and training new employees. In today's market in particular, it seems the want list and the job boards on all nonprofit associations that I see are long, and it takes months and months and months to be able to fill a position. The longer you're able to retain employees, the better position they are to become leaders and champions for the cause and your work. Our session today has 3 takeaways. Number 1, determine if you currently have effective organizational leadership in place. Number 2, assess how you're currently building and empowering your staff to be leaders within your organization. And number 3, how to create an inclusive workplace culture. So, first things first, how do you determine if you've got effective organizational leadership in place? I'd start with a question. How confident are you that you have the right leaders in place at this moment to lead your organization through its next stage of growth and transition? And when I'm talking about leaders doesn't necessarily mean your executive director or your CEO. There can be leaders in your organization that have a variety of titles. They may be brand new staff people. They may be volunteers that you've had for a number of years. Leadership isn't bestowed once you get a new title. Leaders can be at any stage of your organization. So, do you have the right people in place that you can continue to grow? Have you taken the time to assess what skill sets are needed to move your organization forward, and ideally skill sets that are aligned with your vision and strategic plan? Another question for you to consider, is your organization right sized? Meaning that you have the correct staff ratio to accomplish your goals. And I say staff loosely. You may be a small organization that depends on volunteers to get your operational work done, or you may be a larger organization that has, several staff, maybe 10 or more, right? So, but have you right sized it? Meaning, do you have the correct positions in place to be able to fulfill your missional work? Another question I would ask, are some or all of your staff encouraged to learn and grow in their role? If yes, great. If no, this may be a priority for you this fiscal year. So, second piece for today's session, I want you to assess how you're currently building and empowering your staff to be leaders within your organization. And I'll tell you, as a younger executive director, I certainly didn't know that this was part of my job. Or if I did, I didn't know where to start in terms of ensuring that I was responsible for ensuring performance development with my team. And I lost staff because of it. So I start with this in terms of underscoring the importance of annual reviews to help your employees feel valued, have a voice, and understand the clear expectations of goals and priorities. Oftentimes, when I'm working with boards and staff, I'll ask the question, has your executive director's review been completed this year? And oftentimes folks can't look at me, or they'll kind of duck, or they'll kind of shrug their shoulders and say, yeah, we haven't gotten to it yet. That completely demeans the position and certainly acts as a demoralizing agent for that staff person. But the same thing would be said for executive directors if you haven't taken the time to actually review your staff. And I would go kind of a couple steps forward. It's not enough anymore to provide an annual review. And it can't be an annual review on a job description. A job description is subjective. It is this dumping ground, ideally, that we're looking at each year to make sure that we're staying on point for the role, that it's a dumping ground of work. And a job description does not actually set annual performance objectives for each staff member. And those are critically important for the staff to know exactly what it is they're supposed to be focusing on and how they're going to have success measured that year. So make sure this year that you move from review on job description to review on performance objectives and ensure that the first time that an employee hears about how they're doing isn't at their annual review. I would encourage you to consider as a part of your performance objectives to actually put in professional development plans. We've finally gotten to a stage for many organizations where there's a recognition that budgeting for professional development is really important for the organization, but you can't just budget for it. There actually needs to be a plan put in place so that each staff member, whether you have a staff of one or a myriad of staff, actually are mapping out where do they want to grow this year. And it should be both things that are germane to their position, but it also could be items that they're interested in learning that may not be a part of their current position. That's how we grow leaders. We want them to have a vested interest in putting together that plan with you because it indicates to staff that you value them and are committed to their growth and development. We want them to help identify, as well as you identifying, what skills can be built amongst your team to help your organization build capacity and grow. A mentor of mine shared with me at one point in time, Kari, if you're lucky enough to have staff, your responsibility is to coach up or to coach out. And I wasn't exactly sure what Steve meant. I'm like, well, I have to fire someone? What do you mean by coaching out, right? Well, coaching up, certainly that's leadership development within your organization. But coaching out means there's going to come a time, potentially at your organization, where the employee is going to leave. And they may leave because there's no continued upward mobility at your nonprofit. Your organization is small, or it may mean they need to look for a different opportunity outside of your nonprofit because where they want to grow isn't an opportunity you have. That would be coaching out. And our job as a leader is to build leaders so that they can take on the next leadership opportunity. When I'm thinking about professional development, it's not just about skills that they are interested in learning, it's gaps that currently exist and making sure that we are building in plans the ability to close those gaps. I also think when we're thinking about how we are building professional development plans are certainly an opportunity to use as a recruitment tool. We want to be able to look at, are we currently or should we be an appealing place to work? What benefits, culture, and opportunities are we providing staff? Recruitment has to be strategic in order to develop the high quality talent that you need to be able to help with long term growth. And part of developing leaders is the idea that we are building succession. We need to create succession plans. And succession plans is organizational wide, right? It's for the board and it's for staff. The idea is that if we are building, right, leadership within your organization, it allows the organization to stay steady Eddie when there's unexpected or planned changes in current leadership. It allows you to keep moving and not become stagnant and certainly not panic in terms of crisis or transition. There's also an important piece here about cross-training employees, and this is certainly for some pragmatic reasons. We all want you to go on vacation or take PTO, and if you've cross-trained employees, it allows people to take the breaks they need and the show goes on. But it's also a great way for employees to learn new skills and explore areas of interest that they may not know they have. Cross training also is a fun way for employees to learn what other departments or employees do. And I do say fun, right? Like, yes, there's things that aren't necessarily enjoyable about each of our roles. But if we can open the door for employees to explore, perhaps maybe they're an ops person and we get them involved in planning a fundraising event, not owning the whole thing, right? But helping to plan it. Perhaps they're a communications person and they get a chance to really learn a little bit more from a finance perspective about how budgets are made or how we track revenue and expenses. Great skill sets to have regardless of where they sit in your organization. So I think about the third topic for today, right? And that's the idea of, hey, if we've assessed what we currently have in terms of leaders and we're committing to actually growing them, we have an obligation to be creating an inclusive workplace culture. And what does that mean, right? So, in my opinion, building leadership requires you to be selfish with staff time. And let me explain this. So, if we're trying to create an inclusive culture where people want to stay, and we're retaining staff and we're able to grow staff, we have to be selfish with time. And selfish with time means that as a leader, you have to be responsible for saying no. So let me give you an example. Over the years, I've seen a lot of interesting cobbled together jobs at nonprofits. A program staff person who's also the marketing coordinator, and an executive director who's also the grant writer. Nonprofits are notorious for adding tasks to team members who are good at it, not recognizing the likelihood for burnout or the impact it has on overall time and ability to do the job well. I think about the creep that happens with some of the clients that I work with. I certainly think about the creep that happened with my positions. And if we were kind of auditing and assessing the workload and the job description at the end of the year, all of a sudden that job of one had really turned into a job of three that one person is doing. I've worked in the sector long enough to recall that that used to be a badge of honor, right? Well, I can do all this work. I'm good at all these things. You're really probably not, right? And now we know we really need to be able to put some boundaries in place to say this is the work and this is the most important work. And if this is also important, we need to think of another way to get it done. So I'm asking you, does your organization know how to say no? Do you know how to recognize when too much is too much? Instead of piling it on to a staff person, but perhaps your organization is not yet large enough to hire another full-time staff person, do you utilize independent contractors for work that could be outsourced as opposed to added to your team? For smaller nonprofits, oftentimes that the outsized work looks like bookkeeping, hiring an accountant, right, to make sure that your 990 is taken care of. IT, communications, social media, right? Oftentimes those are pieces that can grant writing for sure. Those can be outsourced to contractors where they're given a bespoke body of work, they're given outcomes, and they're expected to deliver a product for you. And then they're not a full-time employee because you don't have enough work to generate or to justify that full-time work. I know we're always battling limited resources. We do want you to move from scarcity, right, out of that for sure. But I really want you to be aware and respectful of staff time as you're building that inclusive culture. I would also ask you to consider as you're building this or rebuilding it, does your culture currently support growth both personally and professionally? Another part of leadership or of building leadership is ensuring that the culture of your organization is a place where people can thrive. I want you to do an assessment as to, is current leadership welcoming and open to new ideas? And oftentimes that means starting with you. Are you open to new ideas? Do employees at all feel welcomed and empowered to share their voice, ideas, or concerns? If so, wonderful. I need to take you on parade with me and have you share how you're doing that with other nonprofits. If not, it's a great opportunity this year to say, hey, if we want to be welcoming and if we want to ensure that all voices are heard, how do we do that? What's the process, right? And it might be that you have other employees help you in working through those. I would ask you to question, do you encourage a work-life balance and respect people's time off? Do you model that behavior yourself? Because sometimes we can say it, but we actually have to do it often in order for our staff to actually feel like it's okay. Do you take breaks? Do you respect people's ability to manage their time and make decisions for their well-being? We are in a markedly different work culture than we used to be. And certainly on exit surveys that we have seen with employees, they leave because of these things, right? They leave because of bosses texting and emailing on weekends. They leave because they're not able to go to a kids play. They leave because they feel like they have to be at their desk all the time rather than us measuring them on their performance. I read a stat recently that said as many as 82% of people leave their jobs because of a lack of advancement opportunities and a lack of balance in their workload. So I encourage you as you step into this year to get creative and think about how you can provide opportunities for advancement and growth at your organization. They could be small, they could be large, right? But being able to actually ideate them and be able to share them with your team. As a leader at your nonprofit, please never underestimate the importance of nurturing talent, providing opportunities to learn and grow, and valuing and supporting your employees. As we wrap up today's session, here's a reminder as to your homework, right? Number one, determine if you currently have effective organizational leadership in place. Number two, assess how you're currently building and empowering your staff to be leaders within your organization. And number three, creating an inclusive or more inclusive workplace culture. Make sure to follow me on your favorite streaming platforms, including YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. And for additional resources and tools, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also check out my website at inciteconsultinggroup.com. Thanks for joining me, and have a great week.